1920s or even 1900 up through the 60s, both Clearfield and Jefferson County had over 200, possibly upwards of 300 dairy farms. When I did my research, there were only 25 active dairy farms left in both counties. Volume 4 relates to the dairy farms. It's titled A Tribute to the Dairy Farm. It's from milk cans to plastic jugs. And again, it takes off of the life on the farm, because the dairy farm was such an aspect of the farm in general, because almost every farm milked cows. So we talked about those changes and how it affected the farms, and documented as many of the dairy farms as we could.
My dad was born, Paul Hawk. He was born in Roseville, and early 1900s they moved to Maple Street in Brookville, and he had one cow, and he started selling milk door to door with that one cow, only probably a few quarts at a time. And then in, I think about 1917, he bought the farm out, which they named it Northview Drive, off the Richardsville Road. It was a little over 200 acres. And then started, we had 6 or 7 different producers that brought milk in to the, one was Gene Harding of Mapleville Farm. Before they started that, they brought their milk to Hawks, and then they put it in the tank and mixed it all up. But it was all, it had to be golden Guernsey. My dad wouldn't have had a Holstein or a Jersey cow or anything else. It was high butterfat. Of course, they don't want that today, but that's what it was. But then he originally delivered milk with a wagon pulling a horse, and I remember my dad saying about going up East Main Street in Brookville, and there's a watering trough about halfway up on the right, and my grandpa would stop there to water his horse on the way. And then later on, when I helped my dad deliver milk for the truck, we'd stop there and get a drink of water at the watering trough many years later. And my Uncle Albert had the northwest side of town, and my dad had the southeast side of town, and they each had their route and went door to door, and they had grocery stores and other places we delivered, and it was bottled there on the farm.
Do you know the Dibble brothers, Henry and Jean?
Yes.
Their ancestors in Randallsville made this wagon at the Dibble Wagon Factory. Okay. The most important feature of this wagon, which makes it very unusual, it's double sprung. And the reason her grandpa wanted it double sprung is he was delivering milk in the gallon and glass jugs on a cobblestone street in Brookville. You've seen them, haven't you, Ken? Yeah. And that gave it a smoother ride, being that it's double sprung, and that's unusual. You won't see that. My dad and Grandpa had a few cows, and I remember up in the house, we had a pantry off of the kitchen, and we had a De La Valve cream separator, and they milked the cows, carried the milk to the house, dumped it in the big vat on top, turned the crank by hand, and skim milk went out one spout, and the cream came out the other spout. And when they got a 5-gallon can full of cream, which was stored in the spring house in the spring to keep it cold, There was no refrigeration at that point. And they took their old pickup truck and took it to Du Bois and sold it at the Du Bois Creamery to make butter.
My friend and I would go down, and we'd often do it right before milking time. And we'd go down and reach in and milk a cow and put it in, feed the cats. Well, then when the men would come in to do the milking, the cows had already let the milk down, and they didn't get much milk from those cows that we milked for the cats.
In the summertime, we had to deliver our 10-gallon milk cans down to the end of the lane for a truck to come by and pick them up. And we had a little old Alice Chalmers tractor and a little trailer. And my dad would load the milk cans on the trailer, and when I was 5 years old, I could get my foot on the starter, and he would put the tractor in low gear. And I'd start the tractor and steer it down to the end of the lane and shut the key off and stop it. And I was 5 years old. Then the guy driving the truck, I wasn't allowed out on the road. And the guy driving the milk truck would start the tractor, turn it around, exchange the full cans for the empty cans, and then I would start the tractor and steer it back up. But along came, I want to say it was in the late 50s, and I don't remember exactly what year. I'm pretty close. The company in Pittsburgh that was buying the milk in the 10-gallon cans issued a proclamation that all the farmers had to put bulk tanks in, no more 10-gallon cans. And a group of farmers in this area, including my dad and two uncles, said, no way am I putting in a bulk tank because I have to build a new, bigger milk house and I have to spend a lot of money. So they got together and had several meetings. I remember them coming to my house, having a meeting, and Mom would make snacks for them. And they developed a plan, and they bought an abandoned milk plant in Randallsville called Smith's Dairy, which had been out of business for a few years. And they took it over and started taking their 10-gallon cans into Randallsville, and they bottled and sold milk there. 10-gallon of milk, by the way, weighs 86 pounds, and the can weighs empty. They vary 10 to 15 pounds, so that made quite a handful, close to 100 pounds of a full milk can, and that was back-breaking work. That might have lasted about 4 years, and a very large dairy by those standards of the day from St. Mary's called Modern Dairy made them an offer, and they agreed to sell because they was having a lot of employee problems. They was having, it wasn't the bed of roses that they had hoped, and they sold the Randallsville Dairy to Modern Dairy in St. Mary's, and then all of them had to get at real quick and build a bigger milk house and buy a bulk tank, and they started the modern way of selling milk, what we have today, with the bulk tank coming in and sucking the milk out through a hose, and that was a lot better than wrestling 10-gallon milk cans. Plus it's more sanitary and all the advantages, obvious advantages.
I had good memories of the farm, but then when in the early 60s Interstate 80 came through and it cut the farm in half and they couldn't get the cattle over to pasture, they had to take machinery over to plant crops, and that was pretty much the end of it then.
I'm Craig Mowry, and this is my wife Robin, and my dad Dwayne.
1953, my dad and my grandfather went into business together as a partnership, milking cows. Well, I can remember we milked 15 cows. You know, it's kind of just grown over the years. We farm about 450 acres. Well, we grow grass, hay, and alfalfa, along with corn and soybeans. And then we plant cover crops in the wintertime to help protect the soil and be better stewards of the land. This particular barn holds about 130 milk cows, and there's 35 heifers, bred heifers also in this barn.
I keep all the books. I feed the calves, take care of the young ones. I keep all the records on the cows, and I milk twice a day. So it takes about an hour and a half to do the actual milking, and then about half an hour to clean up. So we have a double 10 parallel parlor. So it goes pretty quickly, but you don't get a break either. You don't stop moving the whole time. It's set up for wash mode right now. After every milking, the milkers get washed. And while we were out talking, the milkers were sanitized. The wash is set up with a computer board. So 45 minutes before we milk in the morning and in the evening, it sets up and it sanitizes the whole thing.
That's actually a movable gate. It's kind of like a trolley on tracks. It will move ahead as the cows get. As we get down with fewer cows, that chases the cows in for us. Right? These gates are operated by air.
Okay.
So the air cylinder is the gate at the end. See, when the gate opens, that opens up. Then the cows come in one at a time. They turn and go that way, and we milk them between the back legs.
Yeah, we take like 3 quarts of milk or so out of each teat. So if there would be any, anything in the milk that shouldn't be there, that's poor quality, we wouldn't put it in the tank. Then we put a disinfectant on it. Yes, and I mean, the cows are, they're the ones making the money. They're the ones, providing the life. So it's the #1 priority to take the best care of them. More comfortable a cow is, the better she produces, the better, the longer she's going to live, all the things.
It's pounds per cow per year. And now it's 28,000 pounds per cow per year. Well, it's genetics and it's also feed. So we do soil sampling to add different nutrients to make the crop grow better. And then that feed is also analyzed before we feed it. And then, we have a nutritionist that balances the ration to optimize production from the forages we can grow on the farm. And people say, well, what can you do in farming? Like what careers? We have an agronomist that comes and takes soil samples and tells us what nutrients to apply. Because, everybody says, oh, farmers are out putting on pesticides and fertilizer. We are, but no more than needed because, that stuff's expensive.
Yeah, we have a nutritionist for our cow. We have a lady that comes in once a month from Dairy One out of New York. And she comes in and sets up meters on each milking machine. And as each cow comes in, she weighs how much milk they have for that milking, and then she collects a sample from it. And it tests it for fat, for protein, for somatic cell count. And then we have those numbers, so each individual cow is tested, so we know, what cows are your best cows, and if that cow has high somatic cell count or anything like that. And then also, every time the milk truck comes, they take samples out of your tank.
Do you have software to track all of the information?
Yes.
So
We actually have an app on our
Yeah, we have an app on our cell phone and it's on it, which links back to the laptop. Yeah.
So we're trying to maximize our production with the least amount of inputs.